All right, let's welcome on Mike Golic Jr. He is the co-host of GoJo and Golic, DraftKings Network, weekday mornings, 8 to 10 Eastern time. That's, of course, 7 to 9 our time. He's on KCMO in Kansas City. He's also a diehard Swiftie. We found that out a couple of weeks ago from Dad. Mike, good morning. So you got to be loving the Chiefs on this run, huh?
Oh, it's been awesome, man. And I mean, the thing I think, because I'm, a millennial, so I've got a little bit of that, bleep you to my mentality on a lot of things that tick people off. But I've enjoyed how mad it's made a lot of people during the course of this run. And I've gotten to bask in that as someone who sits in the middle of the Venn diagram of NFL fan Swifties.
So as a fellow millennial myself, I'll say this. I was just going on this kind of quasi-rant before you came on. The people who are, bothered by seeing Taylor Swift on their TV during a game, I don't know about you, but I'd rather see Taylor Swift, Mike, than look at 81-year-old Jerry Jones gumming away on some food in his box. I don't get the whole, anti-Taylor Swift, oh, my goodness, they just showed her, I'm going to melt down mentality that we're seeing the last couple of months.
Oh, I mean, it's pretty easy to explain because most of it seems tied to a lot of, old-school sexism and misogyny. It's the same guys that want to use sports as an escape from the women in their lives because they don't think they'd actually like this. And now that women are coming into this space, and God forbid they're not experts the way that Vince freaking Lombardi, who's watching the game over at his couch with a bunch of his boys back home, is the greatest coach and the greatest football mind ever because he's played Madden for 8 years of his life. God forbid someone else want to watch the game with him. That seems to be where it comes from. It's good old-fashioned gatekeeping that personally I find really distasteful. My favorite part of football, especially now, is that we've got so many people watching and so many people analyzing from different backgrounds. It makes the conversation better. It makes football better overall. So these people are holding on to something that's been dying and they just can't handle it.
Yeah, I've got all women in my life, a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, my wife. I got a third girl coming in March. I love the fact that they are now as into football. Maybe not as into it as I am, but they're certainly into it. Now, this game, Mike Golic Jr., Ravens, home, of course, taking on the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. The question was, how would Mahomes handle road playoff games? I was never all that concerned. Did he put that notion to bed that, Mahomes on the road, or do you think this environment in Baltimore could be a little different?
So I always thought that home road splits were a little bit overblown in general in most circumstances. There's a difference of when it's a team like the Miami Dolphins, who's basically a quasi-dome team because they're so used to playing in warm weather because their style of play really requires a fast track. Everything we know about Kansas City, they were used to playing in cold, and with how they've had to adjust in the post-Tyreek Hill world and how they played this last game using so many tight ends on the field, sort of battening down the hatches, they were always going to be built for whatever this environment brought their way. The guys in the core of this roster have played on big stages, so the crowd element wasn't going to be something that took them out of this. So I never worried about that. The thing I worry about for them, and a question that Patrick Mahomes has also answered time and time again, is going up against the best defense in the NFL. How are they going to fare given some of the areas of this offense that we've seen struggle in the last couple of years? And especially this year, Patrick Mahomes is, I believe, 6-1 career against the number one scoring defense in the NFL. So he's very good at finding a way, but this year's Baltimore team really is as complete a football team as the NFL has left in the dance right now.
So what do you do if you're the Chiefs? The Chiefs defense has obviously done a good job helping carry this team this year, and people are starting to notice that. How do you try to stop, maybe not stop Lamar Jackson, but how do you slow him down?
Yeah, so much of what we talked about this postseason sounds really cliche, but you've got to try and slow the rushing attack as best you can. And I think you've got to try and make it one-dimensional, meaning you've got to choose who you're going to let beat you, because Baltimore's whole rushing attack is designed on, because they have Lamar Jackson, you have to be scared at all times. And so for Steve Spagnuolo, who is the best bespoke defensive game plan designer of probably modern football, especially when it comes to the postseason, you got to make a choice. Are we going to make Lamar Jackson hand the ball off every time, or are we going to take the running back away every time? But either way, I think you've got to try and eliminate some of the options from their offense, because that's what made them so great this year. They've always had that in the rushing attack, but now they've got that same optionality in the passing attack. You got to figure out what you're going to take away, and then if that starts on the ground, then how do you allocate, resources like Jarius Sneed on the back end in a way that tries to slow down a passing game that, since they added Zay Flowers, has become really, really potent, especially in the middle area of the field between 10 and 20 yards.
That is such an interesting point. What is the thing then, Mike, that because for those of us that haven't watched a lot of Lamar Jackson, haven't seen a lot of Ravens games, watching and getting mostly the Chiefs games out here, obviously, what has taken Lamar from being, a top 5 to 6, 7, 8 quarterback to now being a top 3 quarterback? Is it that accuracy in the mid-passing game?
I think it's just the fact that they have a mid-passing game now, because you got to think, we heard from Eric DeCosta himself, the Ravens had missed in their estimation on the receivers they had drafted near the top of the draft. They hadn't had as competent a targets outside of Mark Andrews in the middle of the field. And Greg Roman, their former offensive coordinator, was oft criticized for just not adding enough of the passing concepts that were going to help Lamar Jackson show off the skills that he used in Bobby Petrino's offense in college that did have a lot of these same elements to it. So I think it's, one, the right personnel at the right time. Isaiah Likely's been great in that tight end room opposite Mark Andrews and in place of since he's been hurt. Zay Flowers as a speed threat, especially in the middle of the field where his quickness can take over, has afforded them better options there. Odell Beckham Jr. as a veteran certainly helped, but I just think they put more of those plays into the offense. Todd Monken had so much of that in his bag from his time in the NFL, from his time at Georgia that we saw in college. And so they've given him more opportunities. If you're asking what I think Lamar has done better this season on his own, it's pocket manipulation, by far. Lamar Jackson's always been a threat to break, contain, and make big runs like we saw in the last game. But to me, what he's done for so much of this season, being able to get defenders to lean when they're rushing him in the pocket, to violate the integrity of their rush lanes, but still keep his eyes downfield and give his guys extra opportunities to get open, that's taken his game to a completely different level. And it's why, south of Patrick Mahomes, I think he's the best quarterback in football right now.
Mike Golic Jr. Mike, are we going to have to wait for later in the week on the DraftKings show to get your pick? Are you leaning Chiefs? What do you? It's only Tuesday, but what are you thinking right now?
I'm a very stupid boy at my heart, and so what I'm about to tell you falls into that regard because I sat there and I watched the Chiefs beat the Bills after picking the Bills to win this past weekend, and I said, man, I'm an idiot. I picked against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl last year. I picked against them here. Patrick Mahomes has the stellar record in the postseason. Surely I will never be dumb enough again to pick against Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. And then I looked at the Baltimore Ravens and I went, I'm probably going to pick the Baltimore Ravens this week based on everything I've seen about that team because of what they can afford you defensively from a personnel standpoint, schematically, and how that offense has evolved this year. I do think they are the more complete team overall. And so I'm leaning Ravens, and even as I say it right now, I get a lump in my throat because I realize how dumb that is because of how resilient Patrick Mahomes has been his entire career, including this postseason. But here we are.
Well, Kansas City loves you. I know you were here for the season opener with your dad doing the show when they were getting ready for the Lions game. And I know you were probably a little jealous of Jason Kelsey hanging out with Bills Mafia over the weekend and chugging all those beers and having a good time. Weren't you just a hair?
Oh, my God. Listen, and someone said, like, Mike, wouldn't you have given anything to have been in Jason's place? Because being a diehard Swiftie, then I would have been hanging out with Taylor Swift in the booth. I said, no. It's got to be alongside, not in place of, because the other thing I want to do is crush Labatt Blue Lights with Jason Kelsey. That seems like it'd be a freaking blast. So if he's available, I'm ready to go do bowling ball shots with him in the parking lot and see this thing through.
GoJo and Golic, DraftKings Network, weekday mornings, 7 to 9 Central Time. Mike, thanks so much for being here and fitting us in, and have a great week. We'll be checking out the show. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
You bet. Mike Golic Jr. on KCMO. Good stuff.